All Saturday on News Talk. John Duggan with you 3 to 5. You can text us 53106. We're streaming the conversation as well, so listen on News Talk. Watch us on the digital and social channels for Periscope and Twitter at Off The Ball, YouTube, Facebook and on the OTB Sports app. This is the Saturday panel. In any sport in life, it's always special when you put on that jersey for the first time with your team. It's something you never forget, whatever your level. And this week we're chatting to 3 former Irish internationals, Mike McCarthy, Fiona Hayes and Gavin Duffy, about their debuts for province and country, that special day when they don the green jersey or a club jersey for the first time. And with Leinster in action right now in the URC, at the moment they're 21-5 ahead, and Munster are up at 3-05 in the meeting of Ulster and Connacht tonight. Plenty to go through, as well as the return of the United Rugby Championship happens this weekend. So Fiona, Gavin and Mike, how's the form, folks, today?
Great stuff. Rocking it here.
Good to see you. You're all good crack, I know. So I'm looking forward to this hour. And Gavin,
we've been in the waiting room for a little while, so we've been catching up. So I reminded Gav Duffy, we used to call him Dexter, off Netflix.
Was he a serial killer or something?
Yeah, he is a serial killer, but they look quite similar. So
all right, okay. Well, obviously, Gavin, you're not a serial killer. So
just to clarify that.
He's actually a really nice guy once you get to know him.
Yeah.
Warm up to me, yeah.
Dexter, brilliant stuff, Gavin. Let's bring it back to you, Gavin, then first. So it was the Celtic League with Connacht when you put on that green shirt for the first time?
To be honest, I was trying to think back to it today, and I think the first time I actually put on a senior jersey was the summer of 2001. I had played a full year of AIL with Galwegians, and we had a pretty successful year in terms of reaching the semi-final of the AIL that year. And that summer then there was no such thing really as provincial academies. There was an Irish academy, and we used to go to Clongowes, I think, in Kildare for 3 or 4 week camp, and all the kind of the 18, 19, 20-year-olds that were involved in the various provinces would come together, and we trained together for the 3 or 4 weeks. But within that then, the senior squad were kind of preparing and getting ready for the start of the new season, and there was a couple of pre-season friendlies. And I think at that time of the year, then there's always a few injuries, and they're always looking to maybe have a look at some of the younger guys. And I got a kind of a late call then up to Connacht, and I think we played against Leinster in Athlone in Buccaneers, and that was kind of the first taste of it. And from there, then I kind of got involved with Connacht for the rest of the season. But it was kind of unexpected, and yet really, really enjoyed it and loved it. The minute you get your first cap was something special. But it was a pre-season friendly, I suppose. It was very, very, very low key. I think there was a lot of change on both sides, so it didn't really feel like the real thing. But it was a good taste all the same.
Your Ireland debut, though, was a bit more of the real thing.
Yeah, it was. It was, and it was kind of, again, a late call-up in regards that I'd been on tour with Ireland. We had played South Africa in Bloemfontein on the first Saturday of the tour, and then the following Saturday we were playing South Africa in Cape Town. And I was rooming with Jordan Murphy, who was going to start at full back on the Saturday, and on the Friday night he felt a little bit sick, a little bit ill. So the doc said to me, "Look, you're on standby. We're going to keep an eye on Jordan, but he should be okay." I said, "Yeah, that's fine, no problem." So obviously, as you would anyway, low-key night and Friday night, and Saturday morning, Jordan was fine, everything was good. And my dad had travelled out on the tour. Again, I wasn't expecting to go on the tour, but there was, I think, 3 or 4 guys from Ballina Rugby Club, my home club, who had, decided maybe a year in advance to go on the tour, and my dad jumped on with them at kind of a last minute. And so that Saturday morning, I met him. He was staying in the same hotel. I met him. We went for a little wander around Cape Town, and I suggested that we get something to eat, and he suggested, "Look, I might go back and have a snooze. Big day, big night ahead of us." And he wanted to have a little bit of a snooze. And I said, "That's fine. I can go back and get some grub so with the team. They'll just be finishing up their lunch." And by the time I got back, the doctor, Gary O'Driscoll, was on the steps looking for me and said, "You better go find Eddie." So I went up to the team room, and there was Eddie. And again, a line that I'll never forget. He said, "Get your head out of your hole. You're on the bench." I was like, "Okay, nice one." And that was literally it. And I had a quick bite to eat. I went up. I had my phone on charge in the room. That's the place for it when you're being looked for by the doctor and Eddie O'Sullivan.
Before smartphones now, Gavin.
Sorry?
Before smartphones.
The first mobile phones, yeah. God forbid the battery would run out when you had it turned on. So I seem to always have it left on charge. So I rang home. I rang my mum. I told her I was going to be on the bench and to see if it was on TV. And then from there, it was a bit of a whirlwind, really. Like, it was to the stadium, which was maybe 10, 15 minutes away. And Gavin Duffy started at 15. I was on the bench. And I suppose there's a few things that stand out. One was I actually did a weight session that morning. Thankfully, I didn't do any legs because it was end of season. And I suppose on that Monday, I was going to the beach. So I was a little bit more beach weights I was focused on. But I did no leg weights, thankfully. So I still felt a bit fresh. But a few things did stand out was lining up for the anthems. And like, Newlands was a fabulous stadium. Like, it's massive. You feel like you're in a bit of a cauldron. And I remember kind of looking up and around. And next thing I saw my dad kind of way off in the corner, and he put his hand up, and he had his Ballina Rugby Club jersey on him, which was green. And I just saw him in the distance. And that was a very, very special moment. It was, I still probably get a bit emotional even thinking about that, because I knew how much support he'd given me, my mum and my family. And that was a very special moment to be able to spot him out from the crowd. And then 10 minutes in, Gavin Duffy got an eye injury. So I was told, right, you're on. And I think Ireland had a line out, or we were as close to the line out anyway. Shane Byrne just looked at me as he was kind of cleaning off the ball. He said, all right, this is what you waited for. And it was what I had waited for. It was everything in terms of my senses. Like, I just felt ready. I felt light on my feet. I just felt so alive. It was an incredible moment. I think I'm not too sure if everyone feels that way when you get your first cap, and maybe it was because it happened so quick, but I just felt, wow, this is everything I wanted. This is a dream come true, and I loved every minute of it. And
how did you play? How did the game go?
I had a stormer. As the years go past, and as you look back, you kind of go, no, I'm just going to tell myself I had a stormer. What's the point in thinking otherwise? But I think I did okay. I don't think I've ever watched it, to be honest with you. I don't know if I've ever seen it. And I don't know whether I haven't seen it, because it's been years if I have seen it. I don't know whether I have seen it or whether it's the memories I have in my head. So I'm almost afraid to watch it at this stage. But I think I made a couple of tackles that I was supposed to make. I don't really recall getting my hands on the ball that often, but I just remember loving every minute of it and being so disappointed that the final whistle went. Not necessarily that we lost, but just because the experience was over. But yeah, I enjoyed it immensely.
Fiona, your first time you were given the Munster jersey, can you remember what it was or what the game was?
Yeah, I think it was in 2008. I'm from over the wall there in Thomond Park. I live in a place called Woodview, so I was a Munster fan all my life, but I actually got capped with Connacht first for my first season, would you believe? Back in the day, it was kind of the way that if you were starting out rugby and you were maybe kind of you wanted to take that step up to the interprovincial, you would if you were down in Munster at times, people drove up to Connacht and you train away with them, because it was just different back then. I suppose Munster and Leinster were the two strong teams, and I used to go up and down, and I loved it up in Connacht. But the dream was obviously being from Limerick, being from beside Thomond Park. The dream was to play with Munster, and I went over to Australia for a couple of years playing rugby. And when I came back, that first season in 2008, I got called up to the Munster squad and made my first cap. I came off the bench against Ulster, I think it was. And would you believe I was playing 7? Not a lot of people would believe that.
Not a prop.
Not a prop. It was before I started eating all those burgers and pizzas, and enjoying those beers. So there's actually a picture, and it floated around for a while, of me back in the day being lifted in the line out. In that, I think it was actually in that game. I think I was at the back of the line out, and I think it was Joy Neville and Laura Guest lifted me up, and the coach was astounded that they got me up that high. But yeah, we won that game, and I would never forget, and I never looked back from there. I knew, like, Munster, that's where I grew up with that rugby, and it was just to be part of that squad. And that year we won the Interpros as well. I suppose with women's rugby, we generally, back then, you played the 3. So you played Connacht, Leinster and Ulster, and then it went into semi-final. So 1 would play 4 and 2 and 3, and then there was a final. So the most you'd ever have every year would be those 5 games, and they kind of cut that short as well at times, where you just played 3 and it was a round robin. So Munster in the women's game, it's just kind of internal, but it was still very special for a lot of people to be able to get that jersey.
Listeners out there, do you remember your rugby debut, whatever the level? 53106, you ought to get in touch with any stories you might have. Were you nervous, Fiona?
No, definitely wasn't nervous. I was kind of excited. I knew I was young back then, so I had a bit of confidence about me. I knew kind of I was on UL Bows and I'd played with a lot of the players at that level for a couple of seasons, and I'd gone over to Australia. As I said, I played with Sydney Uni over there, and I felt like I came back a much more confident player. I'd played front row over there actually and back row, but when I came back here after doing the heavy training over, I felt in tip-top shape, and I was just itching to get on. And I think there was an injury actually in the warm-up. So I actually started the first game. I think it was Paul O'Connor, our 7, was out. So I actually started back row that game. So I was delighted with myself.
Mike, we could speak to you about a number of debuts. I suppose the first one, it was Warren Gatland at Wasps who gave you your debut.
Yeah, that's right. A bit of a journeyman, as you know. So a few clubs to cover off. So I should need about 20 minutes. But Wasps, I was there 2000, 2003, got my debut as a cold, wet, dark night in Montferrand. We were playing a pre-season game and it was an absolute baptism of fire. There was literally a scrap every couple of minutes. I was like a rabbit in the headlights. I was thinking, where the hell am I? What am I doing? I was trying to kind of stay out of it. Cockerell was playing for Montferrand and he had a big dust-up with Delalio. The back row was me, Delalio and Haskell. Haskell's only 17, just out of school, or still at school, I think. That was a complete rabbit in the headlights, thinking, what have I signed up for? But I suppose that's the start of. I suppose it helped me enjoy the niggle for the rest of my career. And then obviously I came to Connacht for 1 year, 2004, I think it was. I can't remember what my debut game was, but I just remember it literally being one man and his dog watching the games, and obviously amazing to see now the atmosphere that's generated at the sports ground and the crowd they get. So after that, I went to, where did I go after that?
Leinster, was it?
Oh, Newcastle Falcons. Bath was my first game up in the league. Scored an absolutely world-class try. People still speak about it to this day.
Your only one, was it, Mike? Your only try?
Well, yeah, it's probably the last time I scored, about 2005. But yeah, wow, what an incredible try that was. But I won't talk you through it. And what else?
Leinster.
Leinster. So Leinster was kind of a bit of a long time coming for me. So I'd nearly joined when Checker was there. Gav will remember I nearly joined when Fionn Carr and Sean Cronin joined. I'd actually met Joe Schmidt, John O'Gibbs, guy used to be in the hotel, told them I was joining, went back to Connacht, and the likes of Gav Duffy talked me into staying for another 2 years. He's a very good salesman. But loved my time at Connacht. But yeah, eventually got to Leinster, and it was a long time coming to get the debut. I think it was Scarlets away, and we scored another world-class try. The length of the field, I don't think I was involved in it, but I was involved in the celebration, ran in, and I think I was just so excited and on a massive high. I don't know why it came into my head, but I just ran and jumped on Jimmy Gopperth, started screaming, "Sausages! Sausages!" And like people were like, look at me thinking, what the hell is he on about? It was a bit awkward. Thought nothing of it. And then we had the review on the Monday, looking back at the game, didn't realise that the refs, Mike, picked up me screaming sausages. So John O'Gibbs called me sausages for the rest of my time at Leinster.
Why, Mike? Why did that just come into your head out of nowhere, or what?
Don't go into that, John. Don't ask why.
This is live radio. This is live radio.
This could go anyway. This could go anyway.
Yeah, I need to be. I think I need to be looked into a bit. I think a lot of people would say, but absolutely no idea why I shout sausages. Just the first word that came out of the sheer excitement of getting my debut. So did I miss any clubs?
Ireland, maybe Ireland.
Oh yeah, Ireland. I was just chatting to Fiona beforehand, and we've had a bit of a similar journey, because for me, I felt the ship had sailed. I was 29, got my debut against Scotland away. Thought I wasn't going to get capped, but obviously just kept, I suppose, grafting and got my opportunity. And I'll never forget it, because there's two games. I didn't have that many caps, but there's two games that really stick out for me. In terms of memories, really remembering the day. That's the All Blacks and facing the Hacker, but my debut facing Scotland away, when the bus pulls into Murrayfield and you get brought in by a procession of people playing the bagpipes, and it just sends tingles down your spine, like a surreal moment. You go in very slowly to the ground, and just a very proud day to sing the anthem, have my mum and my wife there. So that was a special day. Don't remember too much of the game, to be honest. I think I got quite a good hit on David Denton shooting out the line. But yeah, that's that was my debut. Yeah.
And how do the teammates around you, Mike? You know, are they welcoming? Are they have the words of advice? Are they aware, I suppose, that you're making your debut?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've heard what they do now with Ireland, which I think is different to when Joe Schmidt was there. You know, you obviously have your meeting before you go away, before you get in the bus to go to the match, and you sit around in the circle, the chairs around the circle, the coach comes and speaks, the captain speaks, and the new caps normally get given their first test jersey. But now I've heard in the Irish setup, obviously, I think this is just pre-COVID and since COVID, now the kind of closest to the family, you know, mum and dad, or the dad or the mum come into the night before, and the jersey's presented the night before with the parents or whoever it is coming in, which is a really nice touch, I think. But yeah, when I made my debut, yeah, guys know it's special, and they try and help you relax and calm you down, because there's obviously a few more nerves. And really nice touch afterwards. I can't remember. I think this normally happens, but you know, so you can keep both your jerseys when you get your first test. Someone normally gives you their spare jersey, so you can go in and swap your jersey. So I swapped with Alistair Strokosh, and again, similar to Fiona, my first cap was at 6, and my last cap, that was also my last cap at 6 as well, because I never played in the back row for Ireland again. But I got a few more in the second row. And
Fiona, your first Ireland game was against England.
Yeah, I was blessed with the timing of that one. I think I joined the squad in the right year. So it was the Grand Slam year in 2013. I had actually, we'd gone to Wales as well the week before. I think it was our first game, and I was kind of all prepared. I was psyched up to get on. But back in the day in women's rugby, and I suppose maybe in a lot of rugby, the old front row weren't taken off on that 55, 60 minute mark. And Fiona Coughlin was my captain, and she was in my position in loosehead. So I was all worked up and I was ready to go, and I didn't get on in that game. So I think I was a lot more actually relaxed for the England game. There was about 16, 17 minutes left, and Goose, the coach, gave the nod to the bench to come on. And I remember I looked over, I could see my mother was on up in Ashburn, and I looked over at the crowd and I was like, oh my God, like it was just such a surreal experience, because I'd be kind of a joker, I'd be a messer, and I'd be all chat, and even do the warm up, I'd be well able to give the bouncer. And I remember when he gave me the nod, like I just kind of froze. I was like, oh God, there's a lot of people here as well. But I went on into scrum, and sometimes as a front row, if you can get on, it's the same as anyone, and you make like a big hit. Or I went on and I had a really good solid scrum, and I think I was scrummage against Rocky Clark at the time, and she would have been a well-known English prop. And even after the scrum, she was like, well done, mate. Very good scrum, as we were walking away from it. So I was delighted with how that went. And
okay,
as a smaller prop, I was a bit nervous as well. So it kind of flowed on from there.
You got to take a break. Fiona Hayes, Mike McCarthy and Gavin Duffy will speak more about your rugby debuts after the news. This is Off the Ball Saturday on News Talk. John Duggan with you through to 5. You can text us 53106 or tweet us at Off the Ball. Manchester City lead Wolves now by 3-0 in the Premier League into the second half of Molineux. Phil Foden has just finished a move involving Erling Haaland and Kevin De Bruyne for the third goal. Jack Grealish and Haaland with the goals in the first half for City. 11 Premier League goals now this season for Haaland. And the Republic of Ireland defender Nathan Collins received a straight red card in the first half for a high tackle on Grealish. In the Championship, it is Swansea 2, Hull 0 right now. On day 3 of golf's Italian Open, Rory McIlroy shares the lead on 9 under par with Aaron Rai, Lucas Herbert and Victor Perez. McIlroy is playing the 9th. This is part 2 of the Saturday panel as we chat to Mike McCarthy, Fiona Hayes and Gavin Duffy on rugby, who we've been speaking about in the first half. The debuts of our guests on the panel for Province and Country, always a special day for anyone making their debut. By the way, Leinster leading Zebra by 28 points to 10. A try for Luke McGrath to start off the show for Leinster, 2 for Rhys Ruddock and 1 for Jason Jenkins, his first start for Leinster today. Fiona, you were saying before we took the break for news that you came into the Ireland team in the Grand Slam winning year against England off the bench, and then you're part of this whole amazing journey when you end up going to Italy and winning in Rome.
Yeah, that's like, I'll never forget a year. I'll never forget that 2013. It was when I came into the squad, you could kind of see the bond that was there. You know, you could see the team ethos there. Like, it was funny after the match, there was a lot of girls crying and upset, like the likes of Lynn Cantwell or Fiona Coughlin and Joy Neville, because they'd been on teams that had lost like 110-0 to English, you know, to the English team, and to stick with it, and, you know, all the traveling on your own and getting up there, and you could see the passion. But even when I came into that squad pre-Christmas, when you're first called in November, I could see that something special was building that year. I could see that they had narrowly lost to England in the Six Nations the previous year, and it was really building nicely, and everyone was really confident. So it was just amazing to get in there and obviously be part of that. And I'll never forget that. I'll never forget the after party in Italy. Anyway, that was absolutely mental.
Any advice you give any player out there, Fiona, who be making their debut, regardless of their gender or their level in rugby or any sport even, about making their debut, about not letting it pass them by?
Yeah, I suppose it's enjoying the moment, living in the moment. I say that to my own girls when I'm coaching as well. It's, you know, you can let the nerves get on top of you. You can think about the future. What if I do this? But if you just take it like you train like you play, you get there, it's going to be the exact same in your debut. You should appreciate it. Take a couple of breaths when you're going on that pitch, but it's just like every other game that you play. Obviously, afterwards you can reflect on it, but it's about being there, enjoying it, and not getting too stressed. And I think, and I've seen young girls come on with Ireland, and especially with Munster, and they've been stressed out in the dressing room beforehand. But it's kind of easy for me to say now that I'm older, just relax and enjoy it. But I think if you have a very calm kind of thing, a persona about you getting out there, then it just takes over. The adrenaline will take over, and you'll kick in and play your game.
It seems like, Gavin, from the way you described your South Africa debut, it was a dream debut. So maybe you lived it exactly the way you should have. Yeah,
look, John, I do feel fortunate that I suppose it's a really, really fond memory. I do, as Macca said, I think there's certain rituals and they change over time. I think when I played, I think we only got one jersey, and I remember Kevin Maggs giving me his jersey to go and swap it with I think it was Brent Russell, who was wearing 22 or 23, 22 probably back in those days, rather than 23. Number 22 from the South African side, and what a nice touch that was. You know, because you treasure every single jersey you get. So for Kevin Maggs to be that generous to say, here, I recognise it's your first cap and you want to hold on to your own jersey, but, you know, try and go and get a South African jersey for yourself as well, because it'd be nice to have both. That was a really special touch from him. And then on the other side of it, then, you know, going into the dressing room and I suppose walking on air myself, I said, you know, even though we lost the game, and Anthony Foley, God rest him, saying to me, shaking my hand and saying, Jesus, kid, I'll have to have a look at that one cap wonder team, see if you even make that one now. And I'd never come across the phrase one cap wonder until he mentioned it. And I had to think about it. I was like, going, don't know if that's a compliment or what that is now, but I don't want to be known as a one cap wonder. So you kind of, you're determined then, and you've had a taste of it. You want to get to cap number 2 and cap number 3. And no matter how many caps you get, you always kind of want one more. The first one is certainly very special.
And you came on then in the Six Nations, was it the following year against Scotland, and you got a try in another memorable moment for you? Yeah,
it was. And again, I suppose a brief story about that was sitting on the bench with Donncha O'Callaghan, and the clock was kind of ticking down, and we'd done enough warm-ups during the day to show that we were ready and keen to come on, but there was less than 10 minutes left, and Donncha looked at me up in the stand, and he says, come on, let's make this happen. And I was going, what? He goes, come on, we're going to have to make this happen for ourselves. So we went down to touchline, we started warming up, and then Donncha stripped off, and I said, are you on? He goes, well, I'll have a better chance getting on if I'm stripped off. So I said, right. So I stripped off. And the two of us went up to Mervyn Murphy. And I knew Mervyn from playing with him in Galwegians and in Connacht. And he was the video analysis with Ireland at the time, and he used to run the messages on and off as well on the field. And he turned to us, he said, are you guys on? And Donncha goes, yeah. so Mervyn must have raised up then to Eddie and said, these guys, who are they coming on for? And I suppose Eddie at that stage must have thought, that's fair enough, that we're not going to lose the game at this stage. So we got on, and 2 minutes later, I think a ball broke in midfield. Shane Horgan picked it up and gave it to me, you know, again, like Macca would say, 70 yards out from my memory, but in reality, only probably 20 yards out, and I managed to get in the corner, and it was just such a great buzz. It was, just another incredible moment. And I think it's now when people kind of come up to me and say, I remember where I was when you got that try for Ireland, and people that I don't necessarily would have thought we're into rugby or were kind of following my career. But it's always a nice moment when people kind of reflect and say, "Oh, I remember you scoring that try in Scotland," and yeah, it's just another good moment. But I have Donncha Callahan to thank for that one.
Mike McCarthy, did you ever try that strip off and hope you just get on because you did?
Yeah, I started my debut game against Scotland. So as I said, I started at 6 and never played again at 6. So as I got older, fatter and slower, I haven't really got any more story to add to it, to be honest with you, unfortunately.
Just interesting, Mike, because it seems like you've been thrown in the deep end in a lot of your debuts. These people are legends. Some of the players around you, they've a lot of caps. It's important, I suppose, not to be overawed by the fact that you're right now playing with some players you'd be looking up to. You have to get with it and realise that you're just as good as them in that moment.
Yeah, I think you have to. But I was in the kind of Irish setup, the squad going in for training camps, holding the pads for a fair few number of years. It is frustrating. But you're kind of in awe of all the big names in camp, and it can take you a while to adjust and realise, I suppose, have the confidence to back yourself that you really should be there. But yeah, I certainly didn't have that at the very start. But kind of, what you asked Fiona before about advice for people starting out, I suppose it was the same for me starting out in camp. It's just try not overcomplicate things, and trying to do the simple things well. Trying to have a good first involvement, whether it's in training, whether it's your first training session in Irish camp, whether it's your first cap, and just not overcomplicate it. And I used to be very bad at, well, not very bad, but I used to be pretty bad in terms of if I made a mistake, I'd get down about it. I maybe think about it during the game or training, and it took me a while. I think I should have hopefully achieved more if I'd realised this earlier in my career. But you just got to park it, and it's that next job focus. Forget about the mistake. Make sure your next involvement's a positive one, and your next one after that's a positive one. Don't back up a mistake with a mistake. And for me personally, I probably learned how to deal with that a little bit later than I probably should have. But it's it's good advice, I think, because you just can't dwell on mistakes. You want to have a good start, a good involvement in training or playing. But if you don't, park it, move on, and make sure the next involvement's a positive one.
Yeah, advice, I think, to any rugby player at any level. Mike, so like the United Rugby Championship back this weekend, at the moment Leinster are leading away to Zebra. They got the bonus point already. So Jason Jenkins scoring a try, Rhys Ruddock with a couple, Luke McGrath with another. How can they get over the line, Leinster? Because it's been a frustrating few years. The La Rochelle defeat was extremely painful. Then they lost to the Bulls. Maybe there's a bit of a hangover for that. But the Irish players who went to New Zealand, a lot of Leinster players will be coming back full of beans. So how can they maybe solve the physicality issue? Because that's maybe it seems to be the narrative, that they've maybe lacked a bit of bulk in really tight games over the last few years.
Yeah, I suppose it's what will drive them on this year is the hurt from last season. That they've been that drive for 5 stars on the jerseys been there for a few years now, and it's obviously frustrating Leinster. But the disappointment of last season, losing to La Rochelle, as you said, but also the URC losing to the Bulls. I don't think anyone expected that. So that they were derailed a bit last season. But they haven't made many signings. It's a pretty stable kind of squad they've got. You mentioned that guy there,
Jason
Jenkins and Charlie Ngati have come in. But Jason Jenkins with Dev Toner, a big presence himself leaving. This guy's come in to fill the void. He had one season at Munster last season. He was riddled with injury, so really positive that he's kind of got through pre-season injury-free, and he's starting and he's on the score sheet there. So you look at him, he's a big lump, he's a big unit, so he's really going to add some ballast to that front 5 in the scrum and the set piece, and hopefully be a real physical presence for them throughout the season. And let's hope he stays fit. But some key guys back for Leinster, and Dave Carney and Ronan Kelleher both back fit after injury layoffs, and that contingent of guys touring, the same for all squads, won't be involved for the first few games. But interesting to see Kieran Frawley coming off the bench for Leinster. I think it's Ross Byrne starting today, but obviously he's been earmarked as someone to step up and take over from Johnny Sexton after his 2 performances against the New Zealand Maoris on tour. So it'd be good to see him come on. Obviously Ross and Harry Byrne will have something to say about that in the season. But, it seems he's been earmarked to kind of step in and fill the void of Johnny, who keeps going at the ripe old age of whatever he is now. I think he's older than me. But
37, yeah.
Yeah, interesting to see how he goes. But it's a nice kind of you technically call it a warm-up game for Leinster. It's a nice, easyish one to go into, playing Zebra away. Who lost? I think Zebra lost 17 games of 18 last year, and they lost to Ealing Trailfinders during pre-season. So big start probably for Leinster.
Is it mentality? What is the missing piece though for Leinster? Because when you think of how dominant they've been in the URC and the way they blew Toulouse away in Dublin in that semi-final, what has been the missing piece in terms of winning that European Cup? Because it's going to be 5 years now by the time we get around to the final in Dublin next May.
Yeah, I honestly wouldn't say there's a missing piece.
Right.
You've got to realise how close they were. They were minutes or seconds away from beating La Rochelle. And if you look back at that game, they probably were on top for a large part of it. So, if finals things go, can go badly for you in a certain moment, and they just had a bad moment that cost them. So I certainly don't think they're missing much at all. And you can see that they haven't made many signings because they feel their squad is strong enough and experienced enough. Young players always coming through at Leinster, and I think they're in a great position to go and fight on both fronts this season.
A couple of Leinster guys have gone to Connacht, Gavin, Peter Dooley and Josh Murphy. Andy Friend has gone upstairs. Peter Wilkins is on the paddock. What's the expectation around Connacht? They've got a tough start. They go to Ulster this evening, then they've got to go to South Africa in the next few weeks. Yeah,
you could argue it's a very tough start, but within that there's a huge amount of opportunity for Connacht as well. You look at the team that's up to Ulster tonight. What a way to start the season, an provincial derby up in Ravenhill against an Ulster side that's done nothing but improve under Dan McFarland over the last couple of years. And I think that's something that Connacht will relish tonight. If you look at the squad, a lot of them have won up there over the last couple of years, so I'm not too sure it's something that they'll fear either. I think they'll go there with a lot of confidence. And then they go to South Africa on Monday. They play the two teams that were in the final last year, and they're missing their Springboks. So it's a tough start, but at the same time, there might be no better opportunity to go to South Africa now and play the two best teams in South Africa when they're missing their top players. So I think there's a huge amount of opportunity there for Connacht in the opening games, and then back from South Africa, and they have Munster at home on the new surface, first home game. So they'll really look forward to that one as well. So you mentioned there the four Leinster guys coming down. I think they'll certainly add to the squad, the strength and depth, and I think that's hugely critical for Connacht, is that they keep developing that strength and depth, because ultimately I think it's the consistency across the season that Connacht need to improve on. And to do that, you have to have players that can swap in and out seamlessly. You need to have players that right at the top of their game, and you need competition within the squad for every single game. So I think they're in a really good place coming into the season. You mentioned the four Leinster players; they've probably been the highlight in terms of the players in. But yes, I'm really looking forward to seeing the two players who've joined from the Southern Hemisphere, from Byron Ralston, who was with the Brumbies or the Force, I think, over the last couple of years, and he's arguably coming with a higher profile than Mac Hansen came with 12 months ago. And look at Mac Hansen's trajectory over the last 12 months. And then Seamus Langton-Hurley as well in the back row, from what I understand and hear. He was very abrasive and impressive in his first outing against Castres over in France a couple of weeks ago. So those two guys, I think, are slightly under the radar, and I, for one, will be really looking forward to seeing how those guys go if they get a chance tonight.
Jack Carty not involved this evening, Gavin, but he'll be hoping to put his name in lights this season. Yeah, he will. I think you can't but be impressed by the way Jack continues to kind of conduct himself. He's had a few knockers and he's had a few tough periods over the last couple of years. So I expect him to, again, like he always does, bounce right back. And I think he's that player. I think that he finds form and is consistent with it. I think he'll steer Connacht to a new level this year. What about Ulster? Because Jacob Stockdale has had a lot of injury problems, Gavin. Obviously he's a back yourself. He's in that type of back three position. He's almost the forgotten man of Irish rugby, and we'd be hoping for his sake and that he'll get himself back into the picture for province and country. Yeah, again, looking at their team when it was announced, and I was like, Jesus, Jacob Stockdale. I forgot about him almost then. And again, what a phenomenal trajectory his career took over the last couple of years. And he's just a guy that, when he's on form, he looks like he's really enjoying himself. He's a lovely, relaxed way of playing the game, and you just hope he can find that again, that he stays injury free, because certainly in the back three, you need to be confident in terms of your running ability to cover ground, to
step to accelerate, and you'd hope that he's going to be back to his best, because the year that's in it, John, as you mentioned, the World Cup is 12 months away. From an Irish perspective, you want everybody fit and available, and as many of them as fit and available for as long as possible throughout the year. And you just hope that's the case.
And Robert Balakoon, the same kind of argument for him, I suppose. Lightning quick and a lot of talent.
Yeah, like again, you talk about debuts. He had a phenomenal debut for Ireland, scored a brilliant try in the Aviva. I think it was against the States. And even if you just look at that game tonight between Ulster and Connacht and the four wingers, such pace and elusiveness, ball in hand, all four wingers. John Porch, again, another Australian, who's been a really good signing by Connacht over the last couple of years. And I think all four of them tonight, for those positions alone, I think all four of them will have a huge impact on the game.
Fiona, what are the expectations around Graham Rowntree at Munster this season, his first season in charge, in your view?
I think because he's been there, I suppose he's been involved in the squad, you'd be expecting more of the same kind of with the pack and how they're going to conduct their business. But I think there's going to be, and there's with the changes, I think Prendergast coming in, we're going to see a different style of attack. They have to find their identity in attack. We saw it kind of changing in the last couple of years. We had the big kicking game and then it changed. We saw Larkham going to the outside a lot more. So I think it's trying to get these guys comfortable on the ball, and I'm really excited where we can go with that, and especially as well with Leamy in defence. So I think Leamy spoke during the week about maybe being a little bit patient. So they've obviously Munster have lost their first two friendlies down in Musgrave Park, but I think there was a lot of changes and they got a lot of the young guys from the academy on and off the pitch. So I'm excited. I think we'll see a lot in this Cardiff game tonight. You have that partnership of Farrell and Feketawa, which I'm really excited to see, and a man called Paddy Patterson in at 9 who's been doing really well in the last couple of years. He's kind of gone under the radar as a 9. He's had a few bad injuries, but I think he's definitely someone. He's after going past Neil Cronin and he's getting the start in this game. So he's lightning quick and speeding up that buzz. So I'm excited to see how they go. And with Rowntree, I think he's a calm person. They've spoke a lot about intensity in training, and that seems to be the word that's coming out of the camp. So I would expect that with that intensity in training that they will want to be playing that high tempo game as well.
Josh Wycherley is getting his chance today, Fiona, as well. We also have Jeremy Lockman in the picture. Is there the opportunity for these guys to add to the depth in the Irish front row and those positions where we do need cover for the likes of Tyke Furlong and Andrew Porter? Yeah,
definitely. And there's a lot of talk. I've heard a lot of people talking about that Munster front row depth. A lot of young guys coming through. Is it good enough? Should they sign a tight head? John Ryan has moved on. So we've Archer there. But I think now is the perfect time. I think Wycherley, we know he's a couple of kg smaller than Kilcoyne. So, and Kilcoyne by all means isn't a big loose head. So I think he's been really focusing on his technique. And, we saw what he can do around the pitch in that Toulouse game. He was excellent. Obviously, the scrum didn't go to plan, but I think the more these guys get in there, get this kind of gameplay in this URC competition, get comfortable in the front row, get those partnerships up, I think it's going to add to that depth for Ireland definitely going forward. And I'm a big fan of Wycherley. I've seen him as a young guy playing, and there's another guy, Liam O'Connor, who's been around, who's had a few injuries. There's some really good young props coming through. It's trying to be patient with them, get them that game time, but we all know when you play big games you have to have a solid scrum as well, so it's trying to get that balance. But I think this will be the year that we will see these guys really take a step up.
Is Feketoa like for like with Dialende, or is he a different type of player?
He's a different type of player. I've watched him. I'm a huge Highlanders fan, and he used to play with the Highlanders years ago. And before he went to Wasps, and he was in France as well for a little bit. So I've been watching him for quite a long time, and I'm a massive fan. He's obviously matured as a player. When he was younger, he was offloading left, right, and centre. I think he's definitely got stronger. And with Wasps, when he was fit, I think that's going to be the main thing for Munster, is trying to keep him fit, because he definitely can bring something dynamic in that centre. He is constantly getting his hands free. So the interesting thing I'll be looking at it with this Munster team is, are they going to be using that? Are they going to be crashing him? But are we going to see runners coming off him? Because we've seen it in the past. We've had big guys in the centre that were making line breaks and literally would just go down and set up a ruck. We need to be making lines off this Feketoa, because he'll find a space, and if we get people running off him, I think we'll see a different type of attack than Dialende, who was quite solid. Dialende's kicking game might have been a little bit better, but I think Feketawa in just the lines and his footwork is going to be immense this season if we can keep him fit.
Mike, the addition of the South African teams, when I saw it about a year or two ago, I was going, what is this? But you'd have to argue maybe with the Stormers and the Bulls reaching the final last season and upsetting arguably Ulster and Leinster, that it's a positive thing for the competition of the competition.
Yeah, it's massive. It's added a huge amount. It's made it a lot more competitive. And, you know, at the start of the URC, who would have thought that, you know, the final would have been two South African teams? Obviously, DHL Stormers beating Ulster in that semi-final. Heartbreak for Ulster. I think they conceded that try on the 85th minute, and they would have had a home final. So obviously, Ulster carrying a lot of hurt into this season as well. Hopefully, be looking to do one better this season. But yeah, they've added a huge amount. And then, as you said, the Bulls beating Leinster. Maybe Leinster had a little bit of a hangover after the loss to La Rochelle. But, you know, Leinster probably physically beaten up by the Bulls in that game. Massive, big physical packs when they're at full strength. We saw the start of the URC. They weren't at full strength and they just got stronger and stronger as the competition went on. And, you know, I suppose referring back to what you asked before about where do Leinster need to get better, probably if you look at that Bulls game, it was probably, you know, perhaps they dropped a little bit in their physicality and their defence, and that's something I was reading earlier. Luke McGrath had alluded to. They went back and normally at the end of the season, you know, guys would go away off on holidays, but they brought the guys that weren't going on tour. They brought them all back in to kind of park the two losses, the La Rochelle and the Bulls game. They reviewed it. It was a very dark place for 2 days, as you'd expect, and they identified they need to kind of really tighten up on their defence. And, you know, you mentioned Dennis Leamy, Munster legend there, going back to Munster to do the defence and the breakdown, and similar, Sean O'Brien coming back to Leinster. He's going to add a huge amount to the Leinster breakdown, the Leinster defence, the kind of the line speed, the aggressiveness in terms of winning the collisions. And, you know, I liken it a little bit to, you know, Ireland under Andy Farrell. You know, a few questions were being asked at the very start. You know, for me, Paul O'Connell came in and really tightened up the breakdown, brought, you know, a ferociousness, the directness, a real physical and nasty edge to the breakdown. And I think you saw a big change in that. That's just fully what I expect to see from Leinster. You know, these early stages, Sean O'Brien's imprint, apparently he's been blowing the pee out the whistle in training pretty much every session. So, and the same with Leamy going to Munster, two legends. And, you know, I don't know why it's coming to my head, but for Connacht, I'd love to see Johnny O'Connor back out there on the field. I know he's strength and conditioning, but, you know, Connacht legend there. And, you know, he's the same vein as Leamy and Sean O'Brien. And I'm sure he could add a huge amount in terms of breakdown and, you know, the physicality and just how to be a general nuisance around the pitch. 5 tries now for Leinster, Mike. Dave Carney with the 5th. So 33 points to 22 that lead Zebra in that URC opener in Parma. Declan Darcy, also from a GA background for the Dubs, very successful under Jim Gavin, won 5 All-Irelands in a row, was a Leitrim captain of the Connacht title in 1994. He's joined the Leinster setup. Really interesting to see the work he's going to do with Leo Cullen over the next year or so. And also, Mike, like so many Leinster players went down to New Zealand and won that series, that amazing, groundbreaking series for Ireland. Their tails will be up now, and psychologically, that might be a real boon for them, you know? Sorry, it cut out. It froze the last 5 seconds. You'll have to repeat just the psychological benefits of that New Zealand tour for those Leinster players there that were touring with Ireland. Oh yeah, of course. It's gonna, you know, they're going to come back with, you know, a lot of confidence. You know, those younger players who featured in the, you know, for all the provinces who featured in those 2 Maori All Blacks games. You know, one, brilliant to get that experience, and you know, to go over there. Tours don't come any tougher than going to New Zealand, and you know, everyone on that tour did incredibly well. You know, especially after losing that first game, to come back and win the next 2 tests, absolutely incredible. So it'll only stand to the provinces, and then, you know, whether you like it or you don't like it, this emerging tour that's happening. You know, the likes of I think Rod Balakuna you're talking about earlier. I think he's going to be going on that, and Kieran Frawley. You know, they're just going to go away, and I think what they'll be expecting from the likes of Kieran Frawley is for him to lead in the way Johnny Sexton led on the All Blacks tour. They'll be looking for him to step up and lead not only on the pitch but off the pitch in the same vein as, you know, I think they're trying to clone him to be the next Johnny Sexton, I suppose. So, you know, those guys are going to go away, and again, they're going to come back, have a lot more confidence, and you know, it's going to ripple into the provinces for the rest of the season.
53106, John in Limerick says, lived in England for a number of years, late 80s, early 90s, returned to Limerick going on 30, decided to go back and play rugby after 10 years. First game back, had the same feeling pulling up my socks as I did when I first played at 10 years of age. Great feeling, as we spoke about debuts there earlier on. Gavin, Kieran Frawley, what's your feeling on him in terms of the impact he can make in the game over the next while?
I think it's interesting that he's been brought with Ireland on the immersion tour. And it'd be interesting to see if they do go, right, let's really have a look at him now at 10 and give him the opportunity to play the 3 games down there. Maybe he might not play all 3, but to give him the opportunity to really train at 10 and play at 10. And then look, it all comes back to then, does he get back in and play the big games then at Leinster? Because I think you need to be playing those big games. Ireland are obviously still trying to search and confirm who will be their second, never mind their third place 10. But I think Jack Carty will still have a big role to play. I think, I'm biased obviously, but I think he will get exposed to those big games, those interprovincial games. And that's where I think, the likes of Jack can kind of reclaim his position. And I'd probably say behind Johnny. I think Johnny will go right through now to the World Cup at this stage. I think he's smart enough. I think the management are smart enough in terms of how they get him there in one piece and firing and ready to go and be at the top of his game, because there can't be any sentimental decision around, Johnny's selection for the World Cup. I'd say he'll probably know himself if he's still at that level. But I think those big influential games around Christmas and Six Nations, it'll be interesting to see who's the backup 10, because I think at that stage they'll have to have pinned their colours to the mast.
A big year for Joey Carberry as well, Fiona.
Yeah, huge year. I think, he's getting to that kind of stage now where he either is going to be the backup to Johnny going forward, or, Jack Carty's going to take over one of the Burns. Obviously, I know Frawley, they're looking at him and they said they're going to look at him, but I think he's going to be a future project, because I can't imagine him with both Burns getting much Leinster game time and Johnny in the big games. But it's a huge game from Joey. But like with Prendergast, he's one of the best coaches around to work with him. He's spoken about his style and how he likes to play, and it's a little bit more structured than what he would have had in the past with Johan van Graan. So I think it will suit him. And a lot of the games last year, I think, looking at Munster, a lot of people blamed Carberry. He was playing too flat, he was playing too deep at times, or he didn't have that shine that people had seen in the past. But you've got to look at what's going on around him as well. And I thought Munster as a whole in the back line probably weren't firing. So I think this season will be huge for him going forward. Obviously he's going to concentrate on his form in Munster, and if that pays off, I think he will be a shoe-in. Maybe I'll argue with Gavin there. I think he probably would take that second jersey if his form comes true. And
just to finish, Fiona, the women's team was a great win in the first test in Japan, kind of went the other way in the second test, but the professional contracts are coming into play now. How are we set over the next few months now going into the Six Nations in your view?
Yeah, I think it's going in the right direction. Obviously, we saw the advantage of professionalism. Even myself watching the game, I was like, this team are on fire. The young guns, they're rocking it. And then a week later, they look like they had no lead left in their legs. They were all wrecked and they're all tired. So I think it's going in the right direction. I think the structure internally in Ireland is good. Myself and Gavin were chatting about it as well. It goes AIL, Interpros, and then they take that step up to that international level. Obviously the girls over in England are going to be playing the Prem. It's looking well. I think the pressure is off as well. It's not in a World Cup year, or it is a World Cup year that they're not involved in, so they're probably not going to have any November internationals, so they have a lot of time now to prep for this up and coming Six Nations. And that's where you catch teams as well that have been have a bit of a hangover after a World Cup, so it could be a good year that we might be able to put it up to the likes of England and France. And it's, as I said, it's going in the right direction, and some of the girls playing are playing out of their skin. Sam Manning, there's some really strong characters starting to put their hand up, and with a potential lines I was reading team going forward, you could be getting 3-4 Irish girls on that as well with the way they're playing at the minute.
Fiona Hayes, Gavin Duffy, Mike McCarthy, thanks so much for your time today, speaking about your debuts in rugby and also the URC. Appreciate it, and we'll chat again as the season progresses.
Thanks, John. See you guys.
Thanks guys.
Thanks, folks.
Happy birthday for tomorrow, Fiona.
Oh, Fiona, happy birthday. Didn't know.
Don't say that, I'm too old. Bye, guys.
See you. Okay. Manchester City have beaten Wolves 3-0 in the Premier League with Phil Foden, Jack Grealish and Erling Haaland on the mark. Nathan Collins sent off for Wolves. We're Going to look ahead to all of that in terms of discussion and talk about the 3 o'clock game and the 5 o'clock 5:30 match between Leicester and Spurs. On Football Saturday between 3 and 5 with Stephen Ward, the former Republic of Ireland international, Wolves and Burnley player, joining Johnny Ward, no relation, and Gavin Cooney between 3 and 5 as always. Football Saturday. But after the break we're going to talk about the Women's Irish Open, which is coming up next Thursday at Dromona Castle. Off the Ball Saturday on News Talk is back after this.
The Saturday panel on Off the Ball.